the licensing agreement or pending.
That was the bombshell to me. Like that was by far the biggest piece of news. Like they're actively in conversations with probably Ford, maybe Mercedes, one of those companies. Like that's if they actually get that deal and start selling in volume, I think of the margin impact of that.
Were you surprised to hear a yes?
Yeah, I did not think they would talk about that. It's just so funny to me because, like, I mean, to the point that Emmett was just talking about, it's like the questions that like can't be answered. Like, oh, you don't have a good answer for that. Stock's down 4%. Meanwhile, like dropping this actual consequential news that's going to be meaningful in the longer term doesn't do anything. So it shows you how silly these short term movements are.
Yeah, and if history of the last 8 weeks is indicative of anything, once you hear about one, does the domino start to fall? Do other ones start to jump in? Do other people want to get on this as well? Is that why Elon said it without being prompted to ask it? Was it a chess move? Lots of things I was thinking about during that.
I was wondering the same thing. It was like a chess move that he just volunteered that information even before the question and Q&A part came up, just to inspire more demand of other automakers coming to the table to say, hey, we want to do the FSD licensing agreement too, and not be like last like they were to the supercharger partnerships.
I was happy to hear Elon kind of drop the hammer on underscoring why other companies are going to want to license FSD. It's because not only do they not have the training data, they also don't have the compute. That's 2 points of failure, and every other company in the world has gone over 2. They don't have millions of miles of real-world training data, and they don't have anything that could process the data if they bought it, right? So they're going to have to license it from Tesla. And the variable cost of selling one additional FSD license is software margins, which are excellent. Extremely low costs of earning that.
Well, I wonder if that is that fleet-related revenue that he was talking about in the thing, that you might consider other people's vehicles fleets.
Seem that way. And yeah, James, to your point with the not having the hardware and not having the data, mind you, that's arguably the easy part. That's before we even talk about the software and figuring out that maze of which way's the right one, which one's not the next logarithmic curve, right? That's before any of that. So you have to get to that point before you even start thinking about the problem. It definitely seemed like here's my knight so I can take your rook.
Yeah, Tesla started putting the hardware necessary for full self-driving in cars in Q4 2016. And nobody else has done it yet. So how many years behind are they? They're 7 years behind. If they got serious about starting now, how long would it take before they had all the cameras and the inference chip in the car? A few years, right? And then after that, they would start collecting the data. And after that, they would have to process it.
Something else that stood out to me was the cyber cell. I thought that was interesting. I wonder if that's just a chemistry or a whole different thing that we're not even thinking about. What would you guys think of that?
Yeah, that caught my attention too. I hadn't heard that term before. I'm assuming it just deals with the specific cells they're going to put in the cyber truck, but it was definitely different. Hans, you were going to say something?
I saw Jordan post about this on Twitter, that he thinks that what he's referring to there is the Gen 2 4680 cell that's being produced on the lines there in Texas. Now, I think these are currently going into 4680 Model Ys, but obviously when the Cybertruck comes off the line, that at least they'll be using those. I don't know if they'll divert. That's one of the questions that I have, is if they're going to stop producing 4680 Model Ys out of Austin to support the Cybertruck ramp as that comes up. But that's my take on that, is that's just the Gen 2 cell, because the first cell that Jordan got a hold of, it was a lower energy density, and but they knew that there was a second generation cell, and that has the little swirly pattern on the bottom of the can, and there are several different improvements that have been made to the equipment that manufactures the 4680 there in Austin, and so it seems like it's basically on par as far as energy density with a 2170, but the can is much thicker, and so there's a lot more steel involved, and so they can actually make the 4680 a structural load member and still maintain the same energy density as their 2170 cells. So that's a big statement to make at this point in time, especially given Drew's follow-on comments that they still haven't even put silicon on there, and there's several other improvements that they have yet to make to the 4680 cell that will continue to drive further energy density improvements.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The other big thing that was mentioned was that that they would be able to solve FSD if they had enough chips from NVIDIA. That Dojo wasn't necessarily needed to solve FSD, which speaks to the fact that we have the hardware is solved. It sounds like the software is solved. It sounds like the training data and how quickly it is computed and used to feed the neural networks to come out with the answers is the real limiting factor here. So it's shout out Jordan again. It's how quickly they can compute the data. So, and again, this is, let's wait and see it. Let's wait and see it in real life and it actually play out and it be useful. But the tone is, now we have more detail, I feel like, more than we've ever had as far as what the actual gap is to get us to full autonomy for the cars. Yeah, so that was an interesting takeaway from my end.
Yeah, just to add to that, and maybe to clarify, and not saying I'm right, so listen to James Down or someone else on this, but I think what Elon was really implying was that with more compute, then the time to train can drastically shrink. So it's not just we need X amount of hardware and then we'll be solved. It's just if we can train faster, then we can iterate quicker, and then we can find out answers quicker. So just to put a clarification on that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was just the time. It's just they just have to get more computers. They have the data, they have the fleet, that they have the pieces needed to just get the flywheel turning. They just got to get more chips. That was just my takeaway.
Well, and the one thing that I do take away from it is that there's no human team that's involved in that also needs to scale. So that means they have a completely automated training ecosystem. So, their auto labeler is up to par with where it needs to be, and it can run at greater capacity, that they don't need, more humans in any part of the data pipeline or the training flywheel. So that means that they're doing basically completely either self-supervised or unsupervised training, which is basically what we expected, that they're training video data just like OpenAI trained ChatGPT LLMs, so GPT-3, GPT 3.5, and GPT-4, where they are, they're just getting a block of text and then they'll either remove a section or they'll mask words or something like that, and they're doing the same thing for video, and they're just asking the neural networks to predict the next frame, and that is completely, you don't need humans in the loop at all to do that. And so if they're saying that training is the only bottleneck, then that is basically confirming that that's how they're doing that training.